Linus of Tech Tips fame was very slightly called out in a recent Gamers Nexus video about the Honey browser extension that lies about having the best coupon codes and steals people's affiliates. And he was very upset about it and had, at this point, what seems to be a characteristically pathetic response, but I'll show you rather than tell you.
Hey everyone.
Hey.
Before we start our pre-WAN show topic today, I'd like to acknowledge a couple folks. I'd like to acknowledge our team who works so hard to deliver outstanding content to our community. And second, I'd like to acknowledge our community. No one's perfect. Yes, even us. And for as long as Linus Media Group has existed, you guys have been there to help us. You've held us accountable when we've gone astray, and you've also supported us when an attack against us is unfair, and it's time for someone else to be held accountable. Earlier this week, Gamers Nexus took us.
This guy, he's had so many unfair attacks against him. It's really messed up, guys. It's so messed up how many unfair attacks this 16.2 million subscriber channel has had to do. It's just been absolutely awful.
Us out of context again, and I can't keep ignoring this sort of thing.
Linus recently in a WAN show episode said the following regarding why they did not make a video when they found out about the way Honey works years ago, in response to how he believed he might be perceived if he had raised awareness to Honey's actions when his team discovered them.
Everyone's mad at me. It's that simple. I'm spreading the word for the smaller creators. That argument doesn't save me there, and it's not going to save me if I tell people to uninstall this extension that gets them a better deal so that smaller creators can get their affiliate revenue. Are you kidding?
Doesn't that sound like a guy that's taking the criticism in stride and being self-reflective and thinking about, did I do anything wrong? Should I have made more noise about this? And in his initial response, he said that, oh, people at the time didn't even know that it was lying about giving people the best deals. We thought it was just stealing the affiliates from it. So it was really only hurting the creators that promoted it. But then in his response, like the fairly recent response that he made, he references this video here by Original MCW that exposed this scam years ago. It didn't get that much traction. Like, was this one at 32,000 views from 4 years ago? But he referenced this one, and it tells you right here, you don't even get the best deals. That was one of the sections in this video. So you don't get to reference this video then. It's all just very surface level. Oh, how can I have an excuse to that rather than just taking the fairly minor L? Like it's definitely weird. I don't understand why you wouldn't make a little bit more of a stink about it, because they did lots and lots of sponsorship spots for this Honey browser extension, and those are usually 60 to 90 seconds. I didn't go back through and watch them, but they did at least 60 of them. So they did an hour, and at least an hour of shilling for Honey, and they couldn't just make one, 3-minute video saying that Honey was not what they presented themselves as. And here he's just indignant that people would have any criticism. It's obnoxious.
Kidding me? There is just no way that I make that video and I don't end up hanging from the nearest tree.
Well, that's the video we're making right now. And if that were to result in backlash like he thinks it would, then so be it.
Even if we ignore how disingenuous it is to compare the climate today and what we know today to the climate years ago when we originally dropped our Honey sponsorship, our regular...
Right, because you need to remember, back in the day, people liked to be scammed by browser extensions. So you wouldn't have been able to make the video saying that this thing is a scam, right? Even though he referenced a video from 4 years ago about it.
Regular viewers will know that I provided additional context that dramatically changes the meaning of that quote. I mean, I don't expect everyone to agree with my viewpoint. It's very clear that not everybody does. But what I do expect is for it to be fairly represented. And this particular instance of misquoting is bad enough that many from Steve's own community have used.
So this guy with 16 million subs is really saying, oh, there were a couple people in the comment section of your video who said, well, I'll let them go ahead
words
here.
to describe it, like disappointing, misleading, disingenuous, and strawman.
Yeah. So, there were some people who said it was disingenuous or a straw man in the comment section of your video. Linus, you have 16 million subs. Gamers Nexus, I think I have a tab with him open here. This is gonna play something right away,
On
but
a product. On June 24th, LTT.
yeah, Gamers Nexus has 2.4 million subs. So you got like 7 times his subscribers. Think you'll be okay, right? And I think you have just a couple people maybe who are Linus Tech Tip fans who watched the Gamers Nexus video and commented in your favor, right? Like this does not mean that there are Gamers Nexus fans who are like, how could this happen? This right? They're probably mutual fans of you guys, maybe more so fans of you if they're criticizing the video. It doesn't either way, it just doesn't mean much, right? If they have strong arguments, repeat them here. I don't care that some random YouTube commenters said a thing. That's a very lame argument for a 16 million subscriber channel to be using, right? I'm sure he wouldn't he would not say anybody else using this argument against him was a good. Oh, Linus, you said this, but in the comment section of your video, there were people saying you're dumb and stupid. So, well, looks like proof you're dumb and stupid. It's just such a lame nonsense argument.
Disappointing, misleading, disingenuous, and strawman. To my knowledge, no retraction has been issued, even though I believe it is unlikely that the volume of comments about this went unnoticed by Steve and his team. You guys may remember...
Yeah, like I said, you have a lot of subs, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything. If they have strong arguments, repeat them here. But the fact that, a lot of dumb people said this thing is bad means nothing to me, right? If they have a convincing argument, repeat it for me. Otherwise, I don't care that lots of people think any specific thing at all.
Another video Steve made about us, back in August of 2023. But what you might have missed is that his treatment of us then was part of the same pattern of poor ethics and misrepresentation. To be clear, many points in his video were valid, but many others were not, and it was due to fundamental flaws in his approach. Not careless or sloppy flaws, but objectively unethical, unjournalistic flaws. You shouldn't take my word for that. While I do often report
No, I wouldn't, but what do you got? Let's hear it.
On things, and I do my best to act in the community's interest, I'm not a journalist. So why don't we instead look at ethicsandjournalism.org? They have some good articles on subjects like bad news bias and right to respond. Or maybe we could look to the BBC. You can pick your poison. The point is that while not every publication has exactly the same rules, there are plenty of helpful resources out there that outline the generally accepted standards and ethical responsibilities of a journalist. It's clear reading any of them that Steve's approach in recent years falls short in numerous ways. If you prefer a video summary, here's a convenient one from Dr. Ian Cutress of More Than Moore.
The story Gamers Nexus provides is one specifically about Linus Media Group.
I find it annoying that this tech YouTuber with 60 million subs keeps playing all of the clips significantly quieter than his his show. Like, why? Why is the volume level just clearly lower? Surely you have, I don't know what program they're using. I use OBS, and you can see the volume levels. Just if it should be obvious. If I'm assuming they have a producer or something with the production that this guy has the number of employees. Surely there has to be somebody there that sees, oh, every clip that we play is way quieter than the hosts. Maybe we should turn their volume up on the clips or turn the host volume down. But nope. Let's just keep doing this all show.
Which changes the nature of such a topic. For example, one part of ethical investigative journalism is, unless it's uncovering an explicit crime or break of the law, reaching out to get a formal response in advance. Gamers Nexus did it with Principled Technologies, and that blew up. Gamers Nexus did it with Newegg, and that blew up. Somehow, those companies got special treatment, but Linus Media Group did not. This isn't me sticking up for Linus Media Group here, but I'd be interested to hear the reason for the disparity. Steve, in his update video, explicitly states he doesn't have to ask permission, But that's not the point here. Reaching out to Linus Media Group wouldn't stop you from posting your video, just like it didn't stop you him posting the Principal Technologies or Newegg videos. The precedent set for the last 20 years of tech journalism and 100 plus years of investigative journalism is that you at least reach out.
Ian's critique.
And if you think that's a strong point that you care about, sure, you can care about that. The basic argument that he's saying is Linus Tech Tips has a right to reply. So if you don't ask him, then he has no right to reply. Like at the time where this law was made, the only people with voices louder than just a regular person who lives in some random town is a newspaper, right? So if the newspaper doesn't reach out to the person that they're writing a story about, then they have essentially no chance of speaking on a level similar to the publication that's made against them. That's not the case here. Gamers Nexus has 2.5 million subs. Linus Tech Tips has 16 million. He can reply, right? So if you want to say, oh, Gamers Nexus can't call himself a journalist now or whatever, I mean, sure, I don't care about that. And if he calls himself a journalist, I do think that's kind of lame. Just make solid critiques and videos or whatever. Don't call yourself a journalist, because I think that's kind of meaningless anyway. And then you get caught up in stuff like this. But either way, Linus has every ability to reply, to respond. So I don't care all that much that he didn't reach out for a response ahead of time, because from everything I've seen of this Linus Tech Tips guy, all he's going to try to do is spin it anyway. Like they had this recent scam at a bunch of grocery stores where they were including the weight of the package when you would buy chicken, maybe other meats too. The story I heard about was chicken specifically, but they were including the weight of the package, and so you were paying for that. And are the newspapers really supposed to reach out? Oh, hey guys, why are you scamming everybody? Don't you know that's bad? As if really these multi-billion-dollar corporations had no way of knowing. Oh, we totally didn't notice. Oh, thanks for reaching out. It was the machines must have been miscalibrated, or the new guy wasn't trained. No, you were scamming everyone. What's the point of reaching out to you? We know what's going on here.
Was carefully worded, and I don't blame him, given the climate at the time, but it was both extremely valid, and it was pointed enough that Steve felt compelled to respond to it. Ironically, with a rushed, late-night ramble fest that was so poorly received that he pulled it down before I even got a chance to finish watching it back then.
Okay, it was very poorly received. You should show us some of the bad arguments that he made that people didn't like or something. Surely that's what's coming up here, right?
Thankfully, there are re-uploads of the video if you look for them, but in a nutshell.
Oh, no. Okay, good. And there's re-uploads, so you'll definitely be able to do that.
Steve spent about 20 minutes rationalizing that decades of journalistic best practices around right to reply simply don't apply to him. It felt a little ironic coming from someone who has accused me of gaslighting in the past. Now, he did issue a...
Okay, I say anybody who says anybody else is gaslighting, they lose a point or two, straight up. All right, it's too overused and meaningless now. Sure, if he said gaslighting, that's a little bit lame. But either way, you're basically using that argument now, so you lose a point too. All right, no more use of gaslighting. It's not allowed unless you have, like, I don't know, maybe your therapist is backing you up on it being gaslighting. Otherwise, I can't hear it anymore. It's a nothing burger to me every time.
Sort of retraction via a community post that you can still find on the channel, where he committed to republish that video at a future date, but he said that it would be within a broader channel update, so I'm not actually sure if that ever happened. And either way, what he didn't do is retract his flawed arguments, only the video where he made them. I say this because you can still find many of these arguments on his secondary GN mini site in the ethics statements section. Now, obviously, there are some valid policies in here, but many of the others pretty much boil down to Steve's personal moral code rather than the standard journalistic code, and I'll expand on that a bit later. But the short version is that...
Does he consider himself journalist? I genuinely don't know. But does he need to uphold himself to these? Does he go around saying I'm a journalist? You need to take my stuff seriously because I'm a journalist? Because the stuff I've seen from him, which is admittedly limited, he usually has supporting arguments for it. He's not just saying I'm a serious guy with a reputation, so what I say goes. He'll show you proof of what he's saying from everything I've seen.
No reputable journalist would validate his arbitrary justification for his own conflicts of interest or his convoluted no contact policy that he used to justify his failure to reach out to us for comment as part of our right to respond. Now, some folks don't seem to understand why this is so important. I have seen lots of speculation that
Here's somebody posted in Linus Tech Tips subreddit. Well, I guess I don't know if it's his official one, but it's r/Linus Tech Tips. And it says, Steve should not have contacted Linus. And Steve is the Gamers Nexus guy. After Linus wrote in his initial response about how unfair it was that Steve didn't reach out to him, a lot of his defenders have latched onto this argument. This is an important point that needs to be made. Steve should not have contacted Linus given his and LTT's tendency to cover things up and or double down on mistakes. Example, LTT store backpack warranty. Example, the Ponage mouse situation. Example, Linus's actual response to the Billet lab situation. Even if Colton forgot to send an email, no response means no agreement. Also, they don't say it here, but one that I saw recently, maybe it'll be in this, I can't remember where exactly I saw it, but it was recently, Linus did a sponsorship with Aura Ring, and they mispronounced the name of it in the video multiple times. So then the company withdrew their sponsorship. They didn't want to do it anymore. And Linus is like, oh, well, if the spelling of your company isn't intuitive, maybe you need to change that. Rather than watch a single promotional video from the people who are giving you a 5-figure sponsorship sum. That was insane. I hope that is coming up here, but I can't remember if it is or not. But anyway, per the Independent Press Standards organization, there is no duty to contact people or organizations involved in a story if telling them prior to publication may have an impact on the story. Given the pattern of covering, and that Linus did so in his actual response, Steve followed proper journalistic practices. Edit. In response to community replies, I'm going to include here that as an organization centered around a likable personality, Linus Media Group is more likable and liable to inspire a passionate fandom than a faceless corporation like Newegg or NZXT. And those are both companies that the Gamers Nexus guy has exposed. This raises the danger of preemptive misleading responses warranting different treatment. Edit 2. Thanks, guys, for the awards. And again, this is in the Linus Tech Tips subreddit. Thanks, guys, for the awards. I didn't know that you can only see who sent the award in the initial notification. So I mismatched this. Okay, thanks to who sent them. And then he's just saying he found them. But so even within Linus's fans on the subreddit, this was fairly well received. He got awards for it, for that opinion. And here's I'm assuming this is a comment on that same post. Life on Marsden says, Linus's first line of defense whenever he's criticized is always, they should have reached out to me beforehand, and it's not because of fairness, because he doesn't always offer the same courtesy. He just wants to control the narrative of everything that's ever said about him /LTT, and it's becoming more and more obvious. The dude is a self-confessed control freak, and this feeds into that perfectly. So, I mean, that's just a fan. I can't verify what that guy's saying, but he did get 624 upvotes. So how could it be wrong?
Linus was just upset because Steve cleverly didn't give him a chance to weasel out of legitimate criticism. But that is not the case. We have proven over the years, again and again, we welcome constructive criticism, and we go out of our way to maintain open communication channels with our community, like through our...
Really? Because you seem very indignant about the fairly minor criticism about you not making any sort of stink about honey being a scam. You seem super upset that people have anything to say about you regarding that matter. So from what I've seen, you don't really handle the criticism well. You're not all that open to it.
Our sponsor could, through our sponsor concern section of our forum, and through our incredible ECC squad who lends us their expertise at multiple stages of our production pipeline. No. Right to respond matters because of the impact that it can have on your accuracy. By taking a single source and, for his own reasons, refusing to fact-check their misrepresentations, Steve made multiple critical errors in his coverage of the Billet Labs situation. Now look.
So he has a lot of criticism for this Billet Labs section here in the Gamers Nexus video. So just watch this first before he gets into it, because it's not that long. It's like 5 minutes or so.
He published a video about a copper water block made by a small company called Billet Labs, founded just last year. LTT took one of the company's first prototypes to test, valued in the thousands of dollars for manufacturing, not counting opportunity value. In the video, the LTT team stuck this special 3090 Ti water block on an RTX 4090.
If this wasn't a 3090 Ti, then we don't have another 3090 Ti that we can take apart.
How the hell did we not know what GPU this thing was?
I thought it was a 3090 Ti.
So we just casually had a 4090 sitting on the shelf, clearly labeled?
Stating that it should work, despite it not being explicitly compatible. The company did not tell LMG that it would be 4090 compatible. They told LMG that they could try to use a 4090, but Billet Labs itself had not tested one as it didn't have a 4090 at the time. Water blocks have very specific tolerances.
And that email that he's referencing there, if it's not in this video, Linus shows it. I'll read that later. It will be in here.
Clearances for components. So any misalignment would cause poor contact to the GPU core. LMG decided to try it and continued with the video despite misrepresenting the product massively by using...
But I say that just to reiterate what Gamers Nexus is saying is here. This Billet Labs company, they did not say, oh yeah, using the 4090 or whatever, using the other part, I can't remember the names, I'm not a computer person, but using that other part, you can try it, it might work, but we haven't tested it, we don't know if it will work. That's way more so what they were saying than what Linus represents it as. And again, well, I'll show you that when we get to it.
It on an incompatible device that it literally would not fit properly. LTT's presentation goes down the path of being irresponsible, presenting the product as much more difficult to work with than it would be if used properly. The conclusion is,
like, it's a cool product, but it's a bad product.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks super cool.
Are you just saying it's bad just purely because of the price?
It's bad because it makes absolutely no sense and nobody should buy it. Most of the community...
So that's the endorsement that this company gets after they use it for a part other than what they were supposed to use it with. According to Linus, it was like, oh no, it should work just the same. That's not what they said, and so they use it with the wrong part and base their entire opinion off of that. And this is what he's saying about it. This is like a startup company, and it's one, like, who's bigger than Linus Tech Tips other than Mark Ass Brownlee?
I have a product.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks super cool.
Are you just saying it's bad just purely because of the price?
It's bad because it makes absolutely no sense and nobody should buy it. Most of the community is actually really amazing.
Nobody should buy it. I mean, could you get a worse review than that? Really, what every company that's giving product to people for a sponsorship, really that's what they're hoping for, is that at whatever criticisms the creator may or may not have for them, at the end of the day, they recommend the product or the game or the service, whatever it is.
But there's a vocal minority that looks at something like that and goes, lazy, out of touch, whatever else. No, I'm just really experienced at this.
Oh! You got it.
Crap! Did you put it back?
Get a shot of that, look at that.
It found this conclusion on the basis of improper installation. This serves no one. It needlessly harms a small company, and this kind of behavior can kill someone's life work in a heartbeat, and it'd be based on invalid testing and presentation. One of the company founders posted below the video and stated this, quote, "We love..."
What's the footage here? Look at this. Linus going into like an MRI or a CAT scan and it blows up. I'm not sure what that does, but I appreciate the visuals there.
Video and stated this, quote, "We love LTT, but it was difficult to watch their criticisms when pretty much every design issue that Linus raised was done for a reason which was all explained to Adam weeks ago. None of which, I guess, was fed back to Linus. We also sent a full instruction manual that seemingly wasn't used. I think there's definitely been a major communication breakdown along the video pipeline. We assumed we'd have a chance to answer any problems that were raised and explain them before it being publicly misrepresented." LMG faced some controversy from its community, at which point it replied on the following WAN show, doubling down despite a complete lack of accurate or even useful testing.
Nothing would have changed. Nothing that obeys the laws of physics would have changed the conclusion.
That statement is already a reckless and problematic doubling down, considering the elimination of any possibility to change the conclusion, including a 20-degree reduction, which should change the conclusion.
If the GPU had been 5 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 10 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 20 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion.
And we're not alone in saying.
Again, I'm not a computer person, but the way that sounds to me, he's essentially, in no world would I ever recommend this. There's no reality where this is a worthwhile product. That's how that sounds to me. Maybe if you're a computer person, that it doesn't sound that bad, but that's how it sounds to me. I would think, oh, these Billet Lab guys, they must be awful. They don't know anything about how to make a computer product.
And they should have just done it properly. At least then you have grounds to stand on for criticisms.
I also get not wanting to retest, but I do think probably just testing it with the thing that they knew it worked with in the first place probably would have made sense. Because like you're saying, the test result itself doesn't matter. But if it's just supposed to look cool, then it should be seeded properly so it looks cool.
After about 5 minutes of rambling, the conclusion effectively was, lol, it still sucks though. Linus then, after publicly humiliating and trashing the work of two guys just getting their start in business while relying on zero effort to examine the thing correctly, complains about how he'd have to spend $100 to $500 more on an employee's time to test it properly.
But I'm not... I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time sitting and engineering a workaround to a product that, no matter the result, nobody should buy.
Now, we don't have...
So this guy acts as if he takes criticism well, but he's straight up saying, I don't know if I can even apologize. I don't know if I can even sit here and pretend to humble myself and say, subscribers, viewers, people who are just aware of me because of this situation, my bad, I'm sorry, I messed up here. Can't even do that, but he's gonna pretend like he takes criticism well and he's open to it. No, you're so far away from being open to criticism. It's genuinely laughable.
Have any connection to Billet Labs, and that comment was offensive even to us, so we can't imagine how heartbroken they must have been. Linus, in order to protect his company's bottom line, was willing to potentially inflict immeasurable harm to a startup rather than spend, by his own admission, a couple $100 in someone else's time out of the $100 million company's coffers. Making matters worse, in conversations with Billet Labs, Gamers Nexus learned that the company asked for the prototype back on June 28th. This would allow them to send it out to other media or use it for further development. Linus Media Group agreed at least twice to return the product. The first time they agreed to send it back was June 30th. At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event without the permission of Billet Labs. Billet did not learn of this until around August 11th, at which point it was told the block is gone. Again, this is despite LMG agreeing in late June to send it back, as LMG would have no further use for the block. Billet told us that it is now stalled, as it no longer has its best prototype available for continued development. It's also missing one of its GPUs. We voiced to Billet a concern of a potential competitor, many of whom were at LTX where it was auctioned, potentially getting a hold of the block to send it off to be cloned. Whether or not this happened is irrelevant. The point is that there's a responsibility that was ignored. The question that you have to ask as a reviewer is, am I being fair when making this type of commentary? And that's regardless of whether you are just an entertainer or you have your entertainer hat on for that video, but not the next one. And this is particularly important for anyone marketing the future of their business's success on the back of objectivity, fairness, data-driven reviews. Another example of this just popped up.
Okay, there's a segment that they're going to be talking about here. We've seen it. Now let's see how he talks about it.
I know this example is from 2 years ago, but it's one that I'm obviously familiar with, and it very clearly illustrates the way that Steve believed and still believes that he should be allowed to just avoid inconvenient data sources when he crafts his narratives. First up, Steve missed that Billet originally gifted the block to us. We were under no obligation to return it. He missed that they told us explicitly that it should work with a...
Okay, here he is. Well, I'll let him finish what he's saying. It should.
4090 before we attempted it.
Okay. Hi, Adam/Dylan. We have our monoblack prototype packed up and ready to send. We'll finish the instruction manual over the next few days and send it over as a PDF when it's done. Everything else should be in the box. Can I confirm the address? We'll send it with DHL. We're sending you the LGA 1700 plus 3090 Ti FE variant. It may also fit a 4090 FE, but we haven't got one to try it with. You're welcome to give it a go. So that's what he's saying. It should work. Nope, we haven't tested it, but you can try it. That's what they said there. Thanks, Adam. Sorry to hear you had to use the 4090, but we're still very excited to see what you've come up with. We appreciate your openness with your audience about it not fitting correctly. Hopefully your post-video testing show it's performing easily as well as any other water-cooled system, as that's what we've found. And we'd love some merch. But so they're saying we appreciate you being open about it not fitting correctly. Hopefully, it reflects, even though it didn't fit, at least it's somewhat effective on this part it's not optimized for. That's how that reads to me, at least. And then here later on is, so there was a communication mishap, and we ended up auctioning off the monoblock in silent auction for charity at LTX. The good news is that it isn't just sitting on a shelf. How is that good? Wouldn't it be better if it was then you could get it and send it back? Seems like that would be way better. We just need a phone number for the shipment, and we'll be sending the 3090 Ti back today. So they're going to send back some other additional part, but not the proprietary part that these people have been developing. And this is what Linus is showing. He's saying that they said it should work, and then showing this. It may also fit a 4090, but we haven't got one to try it with, but you're welcome to give it a go. What am I supposed to take from that other than he just thinks I'm a complete idiot? Or I won't read this? I don't know, but it's clearly not saying what you're saying it does.
That they told us explicitly that it should work with a 4090 before we attempted it.
No, they didn't.
He missed that Billet told us they were comfortable with us publishing the underperforming results, as long as we put it in context. And finally,
as long as it shows it performing easily as well as other water-cooled systems, and that's what we've found. So that's not the perception that I got from what they're saying. They said it was awful in every reality possible. Right? They didn't say like, oh, it's overpriced, but it does still perform as well or better than these other things. That's what they're saying here. Right? Like maybe that's not fair. Maybe it doesn't perform that well, and you'd be lying to say that. But you're misrepresenting what these people said here, Linus.
Steve missed that the block only went into our charity auction because of an internal miscommunication that left the block marked as keeper. A mistake that...
And I gotta be honest, I don't care if it was internal miscommunication. It's insane that you sold this in charity. This is proprietary part. And you can't just say, hey, that was super our bad. Even if the miscommunication was more on these other people, there should have been maybe another check or balance in place to make sure we're not just selling parts that are currently being developed and competitors would potentially love to have, right? It's another of these things where why can't you just take the small to moderate L? Why do you have to keep denying it until the L's snowball into these massive things where then, yeah, it does kind of become impossible to take the L because, like, okay, well, why were you denying this all for so long? Why couldn't you just at the time say, yeah, yep, our bad. Shouldn't have done that. Should have owned it.
That I took action on within literal minutes of finding out. Now, I acknowledge that I didn't handle the situation perfectly, but I think it is undeniable that these omissions and errors are significant and that they've done significant, possibly...
And that's the level of criticism he's going to take. I wasn't perfect. Oh, wow. What a humble man. Even Linus, mighty Linus Tech Tips, can admit he's not a perfect being. So humble.
Acknowledge that I didn't handle the situation perfectly, but I think it is undeniable that these omissions and errors are significant and that they've done significant, possibly irreparable damage to my reputation, to my company, and to my finances.
Okay, well, from everything I've seen, you should have the reputation of a bum, okay? So I really don't care that your reputation's been sullied.
To be clear, I'm only pointing out the finances because it's such an important factor in cases of libel and defamation.
And then here he just puts up plain old regular defamation stuff, as if he's not a public figure and the bar for defamation of a public figure isn't way higher and you don't have to prove actual malice. Not going to mention that here.
As I stated recently when I was discussing the Honey class action, I'm not a litigious person. I have no intention of filing any kind of suit because A, it's really hard to say if the line to defamation has been clearly crossed, and B,
not really. It hasn't. Not for a public figure.
it would be a giant waste of time and money.
And if it has, my goodness, you do a horrible job representing that. That's not the impression I've gotten here at all. We started from 0-0 on the video, just to be clear.
For everyone involved. I only bring it up to underscore the gravity of the situation. The thing is, words mean what they mean. And while morality is a personal judgment, journalistic ethics is not. It's determined by collaboration and consensus between peers in the industry. Look, if Steve wants to do his own thing and call himself a YouTuber with strong moral fiber, that's his opinion, and he's entitled to it, and you're entitled to agree or disagree. But if he wants to use words like ethics or investigative journalism, then there are objective standards that he needs to uphold. And he doesn't get...
Okay. So here it looks like he does say GN produces procedures and testing up to special reports and investigative journalism. So he does call it journalism. Gamers Nexus and its special video intros, journalism, and in-depth testing methodologies and efforts. So if he wants to call himself a journalist, then maybe you think Linus's criticisms mean a little bit more. I would agree with that Reddit post guy that says you don't really need to reach out to Linus because it would impact the story. Linus is just going to try to spin it. We've seen how he handles this sort of stuff beforehand. So journalistically, he doesn't have a responsibility to reach out to him at this point. That's what I agree with. Maybe you think there's more merit to this argument. Personally, I don't. I would say that gamers maybe just don't use journalism, but if he wants to, go ahead. And because from what I've seen, he may very well have been upholding journalistic standards here. It's arguable either way, I think, at the very least.
Get to decide when they're important and when they're not. Now, I believe that Steve is aware of these distinctions, which suggests that he is either ignoring his knowledge because he has failed to properly understand it, or because he is dishonest. I have no evidence to suggest that he is not smart enough to understand these principles. What I do have experience with personally is his dishonesty. The misquote of me in the Honey lawsuit video that forced me to address this is self-evident. But it's the rationalization for not reaching out about Billet.
What was that there, Linus?
This is self-evident. But it's the rational...
Nice long sniff. That's what that was. That was a nice long trembling sniff. A sniff of fear.
In the Honey lawsuit video that forced me to address this is self-evident. But it's the rationalization...
I don't know how long that's, or how well that'll translate through all of the YouTube compression again, but I really hope people can hear that trembling sniff inward.
For not reaching out about Billet that paints a more complete picture. For starters, he asserts that the information presented in his The Problem with Linus Media Group video was already public knowledge. Some of it was. Some of it clearly wasn't. Billet Labs' representations of our private communication were not public knowledge, and as we demonstrated in our response, they were not provided in good faith or with the appropriate context. Had he reached out for clarification, I feel it would have been clear, both to himself and to his audience, that the events that led to the block being auctioned were an honest accident caused by a miscommunication.
Linus, I've supported you until now, but after this Gamers Nexus case, you're just a liar for me. Shame you. 1649, you are a thief. Linus, you are a thief. You auctioned something that wasn't yours. What else do you want? Flowers? No, Linus lied to Steve. That's it for many of us. Can't trust a liar. Linus is a thief and wants to auction someone's intellectual property to the highest bidder. Because you did that, you literally actually did that. That thing people are accusing you of doing, you did it for real. Thieves and liars. Glad you got exposed. So again, like that's funny. I read that because that's funny that he put these comments of people being mad at him on there. But again, I don't care what some stupid commenter said. If they have good arguments, repeat them here. But otherwise, I don't care outside. It's funny that they're all mad at you. I think it's funny that you're posting your L's here.
I think it also would have been obvious that any perception that I behaved like a thief or a liar is not supported by the facts. It also would have been clear that some retractions and corrections.
Yeah, no, sure. I just think it was negligent, and then you can't just say, yep. You know, it is a little bit insane that we ended up selling that. That's nuts. I apologize. That's totally my bad. I'm the leader here. Clearly, we did not have the checks and balances in place to make sure something like that doesn't happen. But no, nothing approaching that.
Corrections were required in order to address the information that I provided. To my knowledge, no such action has been taken, and the original video is still up. Since we're at this, I would also be very curious to see receipts for the claims that we have a history of failure to resolve issues or unprofessionalism in prior communications.
You showed the Reddit post. That was in your video. You showed the Reddit post where they listed stuff.
Okay. GN further writes, we previously had non-public contact with this organization, LMG here, about similar matters that were not resolved satisfactorily or wherein we sometimes were the recipients of aggressive messaging pertaining to review topics. That is an extraordinary claim that I believe requires extraordinary evidence. I'm not going to deny I've had my fair share of cranky days in my life. It is possible, also, that he could be referring to another individual who worked here. But I dug through every detail.
Even that. Oh, I've had my cranky days. Okay, so you're not even really willing to admit that you did anything wrong. You just, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
DM and email that I could find with Steve. I probably don't have all of them. I have switched phones many times in my life. But I can't find any evidence to support this. I'm not perfect, so I want to make it upfront right here and say that if I acted unprofessionally or aggressively at any point, that was not my intention and I'm truly sorry. But also...
Okay, well, this whole video, you're being passive-aggressive, for sure. To me, doesn't come across professional at all. It comes across as a whiny kid. How the whiny kid would respond to criticism.
The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you stop and think about it. If he reached out for comment, and I actually responded in the manner that he alleges I might, with dishonesty or aggression, publishing that response, right? That would be great supporting material for his expose.
I mean, it could be okay for his video, but he already had a strong argument, and then all it does is it gives you the ability to think about an argument, give it some spin, and then considering you have a much larger audience, that's really what it's going to come down to, right? Like, even with the strongest argument of all time, if you're the smaller creator, you're only going to really get a fraction of the other person that you're critiquing's viewers on board with you. For the most part, they're just casual viewers who only watch a handful of people on YouTube, and they don't really want to hear their person that they watch get criticized. They're like, this is dumb. I just want to see my person do their regular content. I don't want to see them wrapped up in this lame drama stuff. I just want to see more tech reviews or whatever it is that they do.
So even if the argument that he doesn't need to reach out because I could be rude in return held up ethically, which it doesn't,
it's arguable. I'd say it does, but it's arguable at the very least, I think, if you're being honest.
Also doesn't hold up logically. And the same goes for his claims that I could somehow turn it into an opportunity to mislead. Mislead who? Assuming his evidence and conclusions
Your fan base. What do you mean?
are solid, any deceptive action that I took in public would again give him further ammunition to make his case, and Unless he's afraid that I could somehow bamboozle him in private, the most that I could do there is offer an explanation or context, both of which could only help him if his intent was truly to provide an accurate.
They could marginally help his video, but then you have a heads up. You know what's coming then. So you get a pretty significant advantage. He gets a very marginal, minor advantage, maybe.
Account. Unfortunately, as many of you have come to realize after the latest honey thing, I don't believe that that was ever the intent. Now look, I know that the first criticism of this segment is going to be, there goes Linus again, all emotional defensive. But what would you do? What would you have me do? I apologized for the...
What would you have me do? Right, Greta.
But what would you do? What would you have me do?
How dare you?
I apologized for the errors that we've made, and I kept my mouth shut about this stuff for ages, in the interest of moving past this. It's not working. And like, this isn't some random comment on Reddit, guys. This is an influencer with massive reach, misrepresenting me on an ongoing basis. How long should I stay silent to atone for my real sins? And how many times should I be unfairly...
I don't expect you to stay silent at all. Have a decent response. That would help you way more than being silent or whining like this and having subpar arguments.
attacked before I'm allowed to get defensive? Thing is, if I allow myself to be misrepresented, that opens the door for someone else to be misrepresented. At some point, I'm sure you guys can agree, it becomes necessary to stand up for yourself. I am not saying...
Okay, so he's protecting the other future victims of Gamers Nexus. What a saint.
To be misrepresented, that opens the door for someone else to be misrepresented. At some point, I'm sure you guys can agree, it becomes necessary to stand up for yourself.
Yeah. So if he doesn't do this now, Gamers Nexus is just going to go around putting down other channels mercilessly.
I am not saying I'm perfect. Spoiler, I'm super not. But there are numerous conflicts of interest around Gamers Nexus covering us in any way, which he well knows because he lists them on his website. And
the only real conflict of interest argument I've heard is that you guys are in the same industry. So there's motivation for him to take you guys down so that he's more relevant in the marketplace. And sure, if you want to argue that, you could. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's acting out of malice or bad interests, right? And if that was the case, just show that. Show that his arguments are nonsense, that he's just being malicious and there's nothing to what he's saying. But just saying conflict of interest, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That just means that there's a red flag. Oh, hey, maybe look out, because this guy is motivated to make us look worse so that his channel could grow. Okay, sure, I'll look out for that, but you have to prove that that's actually happening. You can't just say, oh, there's theoretically, potentially motivation for him to do that.
And a token gesture like forgoing the AdSense revenue on one video falls a little flat when you compare what can be gained through subscriber growth, AdSense revenue on future videos, not to mention from elevating one's own reputation and brand at the cost of a competitor.
Sure, that I agree with. I think it's super lame when people are like, oh, I'm not monetizing this video, so I'm not getting anything out of it. It's like, that I think his name was Arch or something like that, the guy that said Nick A30 was scamming him. He's like, oh, I wasn't even monetized, so how could you say I'm trying to benefit off of this? My channel wasn't even monetized. Meanwhile, he, by his own admission, he was one video away from being monetized, even if it wasn't a big video like the Nick A31 was. So yeah, obviously you're benefiting here. It's obnoxious for you to pretend like you're not. And if Gamers Nexus is doing that, pretending like, oh, I'm not benefiting from this, then yeah, that's lame. That's dumb. Just own it and just monetize the video anyway. I don't care if you monetize it. Just support your arguments and then make all the money all the ad revenue that you can.
Over the last year and a half, I've made sometimes quite difficult efforts to put aside my personal feelings and move on. In spite of my well-founded concerns about Steve's impartiality, not to mention the painful personal history, some of which I just laid out, we, including me personally, have made an active effort to just go back to normal, start shouting out Gamers Nexus. We've done it multiple times for their stories of reporting, and so we should. When people do good work, we as an industry should praise it, but that should be a two-way street. The honest truth is I don't actually know what Steve's issue with me is today. My last message to him was on the day he published the expose, and I never got a response. I will read it here so we can all be on the same page. A journalist might have reached out for comment to get valuable context first, but we both know that, once again, this wasn't about making the most accurate video. Your glass house is showing.
Talk about an obnoxious opener. Obviously, if I get a text message from Linus Tech Tips with 60 million subs, I'm going to read it, but I am checked out from genuinely hearing him out at that point. A journalist might have reached out for comment to get valuable context first. But we both know that, once again, this wasn't about making the most accurate video. Your glass house is showing. I mean, it makes my skin crawl to read it. It's just dripping with condescension. So obnoxious. And then he pretends like he's open to criticism and stuff. No, this is how you talk to people who make strongly supported arguments against you when you pretty objectively did things wrong. The internet at large disagrees with you on these things, and there's videos where they clearly lay out why people would be annoyed with you. It's really easy to understand why people would think it's weird you didn't make any more noise about honey when you found out it wasn't what they presented themselves as. But just completely indignant that he would be criticized. It's so obnoxious.
Here I'm referring, of course, to the analogy of throwing stones in a glass house.
Oh, thank you for explaining. It wasn't condescending enough. I need you to. Oh, what do you mean a glass house? My house isn't made out of glass, other than the windows. This is above my reading level. Thank you for explaining it, Linus.
Scaling beyond a few dudes is a big challenge, and I really hope that one day you get there. One,
And just continuing on with the condescension. Oh, maybe one day you'll be able to run a real company, sport.
still think that even if your judgment is clouded right now by the giant conflict of interest you have around reporting on us, your heart's in the right place, and that it would be good for the industry. Two, I think it'll be good for your content and for your audience for you to have a broader perspective.
You guys, the giant conflict of interest. And he doesn't expand on. I don't know what he's talking about other than they're in the same industry. And it's not a giant conflict of interest. It's a potential red flag. Sure, I can see what you're saying, how someone might be motivated to critique you so that it elevates their channel. But you need more than that. You can't just say, oh, potentially he has bad motivations. Prove that he does, because he supports his arguments. So you need to support yours.
I'll be moving forward as normal and won't be participating in any kind of nonsense public sniping. It'd be good for views or whatever, but I'm pretty focused on growing the company and our test capabilities and our team. You're still welcome at future LTX events, and we'd be happy to resume working together in good faith if you ever decide again that working together as press is good for the industry. Until then, Linus.
And then he dangles this carrot. Oh, but we could still collaborate, right? Oh, maybe one day we could do something together, Gamers Nexus. And to me, it seems pretty obvious. He just wants to keep that option open for the like 1% chance that Gamers Nexus, I don't know, thinks Linus has had a change of heart or whatever it is, turned around and he's been honest. He's like, all right, I'll collaborate with Linus. And then Linus can say, oh, look, my biggest critic, he's on my side now. I'm absolved. He's acquiesced to me. We do collaborations now. Surely I can't be that bad. To me, I think that's why he's doing it. Just for that 1% chance that maybe it will really pay off big time.
What I said holds true today, including the part at the end. I want to move forward, but that's going to take some work from both parties, not just me. So I'm going to shift gears, and the next part will be directed to Steve, who was sent an advance copy of my letter today, which he has responded to, kind of, along with a request for comment on his apparent personal challenges around covering us objectively. Steve, On WAN Show today, I'll be doing a segment outlining some of the ethical and journalistic issues with your content that I've observed personally and that I have seen raised by the community. I will be especially focused on how they have impacted your coverage of me and my company because I'm most familiar with the relevant facts, but these issues appear to run deeper, and I believe they could be impacting your ability to be objective overall, something I know the community values greatly.
Man, so condescending. He pretends as if he's open to criticism here, but then he's clearly so upset at it. And this is how he responds. This is how he talks to people who criticize them, is he has to put them down in every sentence he possibly can. It's not subtle, man. It's very obvious what you're doing. Stop pretending like you're taking the criticism in stride when you're clearly not. You're clearly seething about it. Right? Like I can admit that I'm genuinely annoyed with this guy. I'm genuinely mad. Like he's gotten under my skin that this is how he acts as an adult. Like can you own a single thing that you do? Like these are not massive L's to take, right? You're not some horrible evil person if you admit to these faults. But doing this, the L's snowball into these bigger and bigger things. And then, yeah, it becomes very, very embarrassing to admit them. The same thing with like the pirate software guy. He can't just admit, oh, you know what? Yeah, I wasn't a great teammate there. He has to keep telling people, oh, no, I played optimally. That's what every single person would have and should have done there. They all would have ran away and roached or whatever. Like, it's not a big L to take. Just take the L and improve. It's that simple. But you do this, and now to me, you're the guy who can't possibly take minor criticisms. That's who you are to me, Linus.
There will be a particular focus on your stance around right of reply, since it affects accuracy so much, and there will also be some discussion around misquoting, as in the recent Honey video, as well as your ability to address, or your inability to address your clear conflicts of interest when it comes to covering an entity that you have chosen to view as a direct competitor, rather than as a collaborator or peer, as you did in the past.
So there he says that the conflict of interest is we're in the same industry. That's all it is. That's the massive conflict of interest.
If you have some comments and evidence on what breakdowns caused your inaccurate coverage of us in the past, why you seem to find it so challenging to cover us objectively, and what steps you plan to make to rectify these issues in the future, I would be happy to include your thoughts in this segment. The segment will...
Oh, yeah, let me know how you plan to rectify the situation in the future. Okay, yeah, I'm never talking to anybody who says that to me.
also include the following letter that is addressed to you. Steve, we do our best around here to do what we believe is right and to stand up for the consumer. That leads to us doing journalisty things sometimes, and I understand basic journalistic principles, but I'm not a journalist and I've never claimed to be. The reason I'm sending this to you then is not because I'm some journalist reaching out for comment, but out of respect, and because I was once a collaborator and supporter, and I hope to be again someday. For that to happen though, I do have some requests. Everyone is human, and we all make mistakes, but I believe that for you to become the journalist you...
And look at this. WAN, their show, is proudly partnered with Secret Lab, these stupid gamer chairs. I'm sure that's just their material that they asked to be put in there. But to say you proudly partner with these dumb gaming, these absurdly overpriced, not that comfortable, I don't think they're actually ergonomic, just waste of money, ugly gaming chairs. And honestly, these all white ones, this is significantly less ugly than most of them. Most of them are bright orange or something. These are slightly less bad, but how can you be proud about being partnered with these, all right? Very minor point, but...
aspire to be, there are some errors in both your approach and in your coverage that are large enough to merit correction. Obviously, not everything needs to be pulled. Your methods aside, it's clear you were right about a lot of things in August of 23. But it's also clear that between the conjecture, editorialization, and what I hope are simply errors rather than lies, a number of retractions are in order, both on that piece and in your other coverage. This isn't just for me, but also for your community who looks to you to do the right thing. As for the personal side of things, I can't ask you to like me. You clearly disagree on a personal, moral basis with some things I do. Which of them are real and which of them are performative, I'm actually not sure anymore. But it doesn't matter. That's your personal compass, and you've got to follow it. What does matter is treating others in the industry with respect and being prepared to be held accountable the same way you hold others accountable. Traditional journalism, while a competitive battlefield, has no absolute authority and is quite often a brotherhood with shared goals that hold each other accountable to mutually agreed upon standards. It's not a brutal free-for-all.
What did he even mess up the first time he said it?
Mutually agreed upon standards. It's not
He said like stand words or something. I didn't even catch that. He could have sailed by that.
not a brutal free-for-all. So, as part of being a contributing member of the Tech Brotherhood, I expect you to be open to critique in the same way that you expect others to be open to critique. I also expect that if you cover us publicly in the future, you do so with honesty, impartiality, and proper disclosure of your numerous conflicts of interest. With that said,
Okay, so now he's saying numerous conflicts of interest. But again, I haven't heard what any of them are other than they both do tech review type stuff.
regardless of your motives in 23, your actions did serve as a wake-up call for us to supercharge the changes that we were slow rolling, and for that I'm thankful.
Again, he cannot take an out. Listen to how he says it here.
Interest. With that said, regardless of your motives in 23, your actions did serve as a wake-up call for us to supercharge the changes that we were slow rolling, and for that
Your video was a wake-up call that we needed to implement the changes we were already making faster. So we weren't even really doing anything wrong other than we just should have moved a little bit quicker. That's it. Otherwise, we were doing everything right. We were just a little bit too slow. All right. It's like, why can you not take these minor L's? It's so obnoxious and childish.
I'm thankful. Now it's time for your wake-up call, should you choose to accept it. If you can. Now it's time for your wake-up call, should you choose to accept it.
I hate this man so much. Oh my goodness. What? Just to make myself angry.
And for that I'm thankful. Now it's time for your wake-up call, should you choose to accept it.
Oh my god, I cannot stand this guy. Oh my goodness.
If you can't put your biases aside, simply recusing yourself is an option, but it might require some further retractions, since you've claimed in the past that cover.
Why do you talk like this? It might require some further retractions. Oh, just the language makes my skin crawl. It is so reptilian and just just PR talk and oh, why are you like this?
Covering us is
Why have you become a company?
so very important because of our business's relevance to the tech industry. Well, if that's no longer the case, then any snipes that relied on that for justification probably need to go too. I understand you may not want to rebuild this bridge, but I still want you to know that while Gamers Nexus LLC is every bit as much of a for-profit business as Linus Media Group Incorporated.
Yes, and he shouldn't have, or he should have monetized that video, and he should have made more profit. All right, sure. Don't pretend like it's a not a profit thing that he's doing or whatever. Sure. I don't know if that's even the point that he's making, but either way, he should have just monetized the video.
Is every bit as much of a for-profit business as Linus Media Group Incorporated. I, Linus Sebastian the individual, still see you, Stephen Burke the individual, as a colleague and potential future collaborator. Because the reality of it is, personal feelings aside, we both fight for the same team.
Okay, so he's just saying, oh, Gamers Nexus LLC president, I still see you as a human. Okay, well, maybe you should act like a human a little bit, Linus. All of this is HR PR speak. Nothing about this seems human. At best, you get reptile, but it's like really HR PR speak. That's how a lot of this comes across as a company, a representative of a company speaking.
The consumers and the community. A community that is stronger if we just cut the tribalism and work together. I've always said that a rising tide lifts all ships and that we all benefit from more interest in our hobby and more contributors to our community. I have always encouraged our viewers to follow multiple outlets and get multiple perspectives, including yours. You used to tell me.
And I agree, as long as you're not watching Linus Tech Tips. Watch as many people as you possibly can, as long as you just don't even include Linus.
That you agreed with those things. I hope you can again, because this is going to be especially important as we navigate the weirdness around benchmarking machine learning assisted cards like the upcoming.
Especially if you have YouTube Premium or don't use ad block. All right, if you watch Linus Tech Tips, you better have ad block on and not be a YouTube Premium member.
50 series. So in summary, I welcome valid, constructive, good faith, two-way feedback, but when
No, you don't. Don't sit here and pretend, oh, I'm open to no, you're not. No, you're not. You're the least open to it of any child pretending to be an adult I've ever seen.
machine learning assisted cards like the upcoming 50 series. So in summary, I welcome valid, constructive, good faith, two-way feedback, but
And so he's also, in saying that, he's dismissing everything Gamers Nexus as if it's not that. As if it's not these things that he says
I
here.
welcome valid, constructive, good faith, two-way.
It's not valid, constructive, good faith, two-way criticism. And shut up. Why? Why does the criticism have to be exactly on your terms? All right? You're the person who's being criticized. Why do you get to set the rules for how you're criticized?
Two-way feedback, but when I told you a year ago that I had no interest in public sniping matches, that was the truth. Our community in tech used to stand out as one that embraced collaboration and rejected beef.
Oh, and then his little yes man on the side here.
Used to stand out as one that embraced collaboration and rejected beef.
Yeah, we used to not have beef. Oh, what? When you just had a monopoly on the tech sector? I mean, I don't know if that was the case, but I'm assuming there was a time where people were too afraid to critique you, Linus Tech Tips, and that's what you're remembering with the rose-tinted glasses. Oh, back in the day, nobody used to criticize me. They were all too afraid. Only Mark-ass Brownlee would ever criticize me, but now Gamers Nexus is getting a little uppity. Even the 2 million subscriber channels have stuff to say about me. All right, well, get used to it, or stop being such a bum.
I would like that again. I chose to
bet
make my
you would.
statement as a segment on WAN Show and a clip on our Clips channels rather than a dedicated video in hopes of finding a balance between sharing my side finally and igniting drama for views. So can we forget the past and move forward? See you at Computex, Linus. Now, I'd like to come back to addressing you all.
Can we move forward? Yeah, you gotta love, it's always the person in the hot seat. Oh, can we just move forward? Oh, I'd love if we just move forward. Okay, well, I would love if we could just sit here with you being criticized for a while, all right? Maybe until you're willing to actually acknowledge a single piece of minor criticism.
For once in the history of online communities, guys, I beg of you, this is not, ooh, shots fired. Do not get into a mudslinging match over this. Continue the good work you do, holding creators accountable. But this is not, and it should never be, LTT versus GN, us versus them. Some folks are going to insist on interpreting it that way. But I believe that the majority, the rational viewers, should be able to see the truth of what I'm saying, even if they don't always agree with the source, and see the importance of moving on. As for the ones that can't do that, look, if their viewpoint is closed, we gain nothing by arguing with them except wasting our energy. Energy we need to power our RTX 5090s. So let's rise up.
It's like, oh, some of these people who are criticizing us, Linus Tech Tip fans, there's just no reasoning with them. So just don't even waste too much of your energy fighting with these people. All right? Just accept that we're right and other people won't be convinced of it.
Above it. So with that in mind then, funny memes, inbounds. I like humor as much as anyone. But if Steve wants to move on, then I would like to respectfully request an end to the GN bashing posts, for that matter any other publication, in our various community gathering places. YouTube comments, Discord, Reddit, and the LTT forum, and any that I have.
And then here he's pretending, oh yeah, I'm so above it. I don't even want my people criticizing Gamers Nexus. I don't want them to get into this mudslinging thing. So we're just not going to even allow that sort of stuff on our platforms. As if that's not just to have a justification to remove any criticism based on things that Gamers Nexus or other people say. Like, oh, well, they're criticizing me here, but it's Gamers Nexus related. We don't want Gamers Nexus to get any flack here, so we'll just have to remove your whole post. That's all that this is justification to remove Reddit posts that have Gamers Nexus style criticisms or that reference him at all. And it's like, oh, now we can take that down. Oh, see community guideline number 19.
Haven't thought of. I'd like us to be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you, you guys. One last note. I know that we did announce that we were going to launch our mod mat this week. A project, by the way, that we kicked off long before the August controversy.
Okay. Mod mat delayed to next week. I don't care about that. You're not going to advertise your product on the Lufa show. All right. That's worth good money. People would pay a lot to advertise on this channel. But yeah, I hope you're as upset as I am. That this guy really gets under my skin like nobody. And I didn't even notice this guy until he gave those not. Yes, exactly right. Man who signs my paychecks. Excellent point. It's like, okay, all right. Is that all he ever contributes to this show? I don't know. I've only ever seen him a couple times when I'm upset at Linus. So maybe he's not as bad, right? Maybe he's catching some strays because of my genuine, now seething hatred for Linus of Tech Tips fame. But I don't know how you would not hate this guy. I mean, that was a truly pathetic display from this